is a land of shadows where dense pine forests swallow the sun, and the rocky coastline echoes with the cries of phantom sailors. The state is known for its wild beauty, but it hides stories far darker than postcards will ever tell. Here, lighthouses guard not only the sea but the restless spirits of those lost to it. Old inns whisper with secrets of guests who never checked out. And in the quiet woods, something ancient waits between the trees. Tonight, you'll walk with me through 10 of Maine's most haunted places, and if you dare. 1. Portland's Victoria Mansion, Portland, Maine. Gothic towers pierce the skyline of Portland, and among its grandest homes sits the Victoria Mansion, also called the Morse Libby House. Built in 1860, it was a statement of wealth and power, filled with Italianate splendor. But beauty can decay, and in the silence of its empty halls, another kind of presence has taken root. When the mansion was abandoned for years in the early 20th century, caretakers reported strange happenings. Windows opened and slammed shut on windless nights. The faint smell of smoke curled through rooms where no fire burned. Visitors have claimed to see a woman in Victorian dress gliding down the ornate staircase, her expression unreadable, her form fading into the woodwork. The spirit is believed by many to be that of Ruggles Sylvester Morse, the original owner, or his wife Olive. Others whisper of servants who endured hardship in silence, lingering now in the mansion they could never truly leave. One chilling story tells of a tourist who wandered too far from a guided tour only to find himself in a darkened hall, where every portrait on the wall seemed to be staring directly at him. He fled, shaken, convinced he was not alone. The mansion is open to visitors today, its opulent rooms restored to their former glory. But if you wander quietly enough, you may hear footsteps in the grand parlor, or the rustle of skirts brushing past your ear. Portland's Victoria Mansion isn't just a monument to wealth, it's a house where the dead still keep watch. 2 Mount Hope Cemetery, Bangor, Maine. Cemeteries are places of mourning, of remembrance. But in Bangor's Mount Hope Cemetery, the dead are not always content to rest quietly. Established in 1834, it is one of the oldest garden cemeteries in the United States. Its rolling hills, winding paths, and towering monuments create an atmosphere of reverence by day. But after sunset, the mood shifts. Visitors whisper of shadowy figures gliding among the gravestones, vanishing when approached. Cold spots appear even in the height of summer. Some say they've heard whispered prayers in the air, though no one else was near. Others speak of a woman in black who drifts along the path, her face veiled, her presence heavy with sorrow. Perhaps most unnerving are the reports of voices calling from the mausoleums, urging passers-by to come closer. A few claim to have obeyed only to feel an icy breath on their neck, followed by the overwhelming sense that something had followed them home. Stephen King himself has walked these grounds, and it's no surprise they served as inspiration for his stories. Mount Hope is more than a cemetery, it is a stage where the living and the dead still walk side by side. Would you wander the paths alone at midnight, knowing the silence could break at any moment with a whisper from beneath the earth in Bangor? The cemetery doesn't just keep the dead, it keeps their voices. 3. The Opera House, Boothbay Harbor, Maine. By day, Boothbay Harbor is a quaint seaside town, alive with tourists and fishermen. But at night, when the harbor grows still, the Opera House becomes a stage for more than music. Built in 1894, the Opera House once hosted concerts, dances, and community gatherings. But with time came tragedy. Actors and stagehands passed away within its walls, and some believe they've never left the theater they once called home. Today, staff and performers alike speak of phantom footsteps crossing the stage during rehearsals. A man in old-fashioned clothing has been seen sitting in the balcony, staring down at the performers, only to vanish when approached. Musicians claim their instruments go missing backstage, only to reappear in places no one had access to. One chilling story tells of a piano on stage playing a single note, steady and relentless, though no one sat at the keys. Audience members have reported feeling cold hands brush against their arms as they sit in the darkened seats. The Opera House is still alive with music, but sometimes the applause comes from an audience you can't see. Would you take the stage, knowing unseen eyes are already watching in Boothbay Harbor? The curtain never truly falls. 4. The Kennebec Arsenal, Augusta, Maine. On the banks of the Kennebec River stands a massive stone complex, its windows like hollow eyes staring across the water. The Kennebec Arsenal, built in the early 1800s as a military supply depot, later became part of the Augusta Mental Health Institute. And with that transition, its legacy turned grim. The halls of the asylum bore witness to decades of suffering. Patients were crowded into the buildings, subjected to treatments now considered barbaric, electroshock, solitary confinement, and whispered tales of experimentation created an atmosphere of misery that seeped into the very walls. Even after the institute closed, that heaviness remained. Today, the arsenal is silent, its stone facades weathered and crumbling but those who venture inside or even walk the grounds say silence is the least of their worries. Shadowy figures drift along the corridors, glimpsed just at the edge of vision. Disembodied voices murmur from the stairwells, too low to make out but impossible to ignore. Some report the sound of chains dragging across the floor. Others describe sudden nausea, dizziness, and the feeling of being pulled toward the basement, where the darkest rumors say patients were restrained. A former security guard quit after claiming to see a gaunt figure staring at him from a second-floor window, in a building he knew was empty. Would you step inside those cavernous halls, knowing the echoes you hear may not be echoes at all? At the Kennebec Arsenal, history has teeth, and it bites deep. Fort Knox, Prospect, Maine. Perched on the banks of the Penobscot River, Fort Knox looks like a relic of stone and silence. Built in the mid-1800s to protect against naval invasion, the fort never saw battle. But that doesn't mean it escaped blood and fear. The granite walls hide miles of cold, damp passageways where soldiers once drilled, lived, and sometimes died. Visitors walking the echoing corridors report sudden drops in temperature, the smell of gunpowder, and the echo of boots marching on stone. Ghost hunters have called Fort Knox one of the most haunted sites in New England, and with good reason. Shadowy figures have been seen darting across the gun batteries. A soldier in Civil War uniform has appeared in the barracks, only to vanish when approached. Some claim to hear cannons booming in the dead of night, though the artillery has been silent for over a century. Perhaps the most chilling tales come from those who ventured into the darkest tunnels. They describe a crushing sense of dread, as though the fort itself is watching, waiting. One visitor swore he felt a hand on his shoulder in the pitch black, only to find he was completely alone. Fort Knox is a fortress without a war, but its battles aren't over. They're fought in whispers, in footsteps, in the cold breath of something unseen. And if you linger too long in its hollow corridors, the soldiers of the past might decide you're part of the garrison, whether you want to be or not. 6. The Strand Cinema, Seguin to Maine. The lights dim, the screen flickers to life, and for a brief moment, you forget the outside world. But at the Strand Cinema in Seguin, it's not just the movie that holds the audience captive, it's the ghosts in the shadows. Built in 1929, the theater still carries the charm of the golden age of cinema. But over the years, both employees and guests have reported things that can't be explained. Projectionists working late hear footsteps pacing across the balcony, long after the last patron has left. Ushers cleaning popcorn from the aisles glimpse figures sitting in the seats, only to find them empty on closer inspection. The most notorious spirit is a man in a dark suit who lingers near the stage. Some call him the Usher. Others believe he was an unlucky soul who died in the theater decades ago. He's been seen adjusting his tie, wandering between the rows, or simply standing at the back, watching. Then there's the sound, the unmistakable click of an old film reel, echoing through the projection room, even when the machines are silent. Employees often refuse to be alone in the theater at night, claiming the temperature plummets and the feeling of being watched grows unbearable. Imagine sitting alone in the Strand, the movie long over. When you hear footsteps descending the balcony stairs, you turn, expecting to see someone leaving, but no one is there. The theater is empty, and yet, you're not alone. 7. Wood Island Lighthouse, Biddeford Pool, Maine. On the jagged coastline of Biddeford Pool, waves crash against stone with a fury that drowns out all but the loudest voices. Yet in the silence after a storm, another sound carries across the water gunshots, followed by cries that don't belong to the living. Wood Island Lighthouse has stood since 1808, but its darkest tale dates back to 1896. A drunken squatter named Howard Hobbs quarreled with a sheriff's deputy sent to a victim. The argument ended in murder. Hobbs shot the deputy, then turned the gun on himself. From that day, the lighthouse keepers began reporting strange phenomena. Doors slammed open with no wind. Footsteps echoed in empty hallways. Keepers spoke of shadows that slid across the walls like oil, and disembodied voices whispering in the stairwell. One keeper became so unnerved he abandoned his post, refusing to spend another night on the island. Even today, visitors claim the atmosphere grows oppressive as dusk falls. Some say they've heard Hobbs's anguished cries, echoing across the rocks as though he still relives his violent end. Others glimpse fleeting shapes, half human, half shadow, darting up the lighthouse steps. Would you stand at the top of the tower, staring into the endless sea, knowing that something climbs the stairs behind you? At Wood Island, the light may guide ships to safety, but it can't banish the ghosts that prowl its rooms. 8. Brownville Road Spectre Bride, Millinocket, Maine. There's a stretch of road near Brownville that locals avoid after dark. Brownville Road cuts through thick forest, the kind that swallows headlights and muffles sound until all you hear is your own breathing. It's along this lonely path that the Spectre Bride is said to appear. According to legend, she was a young woman on her way to her wedding when tragedy struck. Some versions say her carriage overturned, others claim she was struck by a speeding car. However she died, her spirit lingers. still clad in her bridal gown. Drivers report a pale woman on the roadside, clutching her bouquet. Some offer her a ride, only to find the seat beside them empty when they reach the end of the road. Others encounter something more chilling. One man claimed the bride suddenly appeared in the middle of the road, forcing him to slam on the brakes. When he stepped out, heart pounding, she was gone, but a faint handprint smeared across his windshield remained. The forest itself seems to conspire with her presence. The air grows icy, the trees press closer, and the world feels unnervingly still. Locals say if you drive Brownville Road at night, don't look in your rearview mirror, because sometimes she's already there, sitting quietly in the back seat. The specter bride doesn't need an invitation. She only needs the road. 9. Captain Lord Mansion, Kennebunkport, Maine. In the heart of the picturesque seaside town of Kennebunkport stands the Captain Lord Mansion, a grand 1812 federal-style home that seems, at first glance, a place of comfort and luxury. But as you step inside, a different presence greets you, one that has lingered for centuries. The mansion was built by Captain Nathaniel Lord, a wealthy shipping magnate whose fortune rose with the tide. He filled the home with opulence for his family, but yet death came swiftly. Lord himself died only a few years after its completion, and whispers say he never truly left. Guests at the mansion, now a historic inn, speak of cold drafts winding through locked rooms and mirrors that seem to ripple with unseen faces. The most frequent apparition is said to be a woman in a long nightgown, drifting silently through the halls. Some believe she is the captain's widow, eternally waiting for her husband to return from the sea. Others say she is one of the mansion's guests who passed away within its walls, bound forever to its quiet chambers. Visitors report waking at night to the sensation of someone standing at the edge of the bed, watching. A faint perfume, old-fashioned and floral, lingers in the rooms where no bottle sits. And in the grand parlor, a piano untouched by human hands sometimes plays a soft chord, as though answering the distant keys from Seguin Island. Would you spend a night here, lulled by whispers from another century at the Captain Lord Mansion? Beauty masks a haunting that refuses to fade. 10. Seguin Island Lighthouse, Georgetown, Maine. The fog rolls heavy here, wrapping the cliffs in a cold, damp shroud. Seguin Island Lighthouse, one of the oldest in Maine, has watched over this treacherous coastline since 1795. But behind its whitewashed walls lies a story steeped in despair. The legend begins with a keeper and his young bride. Isolated on the rocky island, far from neighbors or friends, the woman grew restless. To soothe her loneliness, her husband brought a piano up the steep, narrow stairs of the lighthouse. She played one song over and over, a melancholy tune that became a soundtrack to their solitude. But as the weeks wore on, the endless repetition gnawed at the keeper's mind. One night, he snapped. The tale ends in blood, the piano silenced, his wife murdered, and the keeper himself overcome by madness. No official record confirms the tragedy, but sailors and visitors swear the story lives on in the wind. At night, faint piano notes drift across the island, carried by the sea mist. Some hear a woman sobbing inside the tower, while others see a figure in white gazing out toward the waves. Even today, those who stay overnight say the air grows heavy, almost suffocating. as if the island itself remembers what happened. Would you climb the spiral stairs knowing each creak might be joined by phantom music on Seguin Island? Silence is never truly silent. From lonely lighthouses battered by storms, to winding forest roads haunted by spectral brides, Maine hides shadows deeper than its pine forests and storms more chilling than its winters. These are not just stories, they are echoes, imprints of lives and deaths that refuse to fade. So the next time you walk along the Maine coast or through one of its quiet towns, listen closely. That whisper you hear may not be the wind. That figure in the corner of your eye may not be a trick of light. In Maine, the line between the living and the dead is thinner than the fog rolling in from the sea. That's all for today. If you enjoyed this chilling journey, don't forget to like, comment with your favorite haunted location, and subscribe for more weekly videos from the shadows.